Welcome everybody to today's webinar on can AI be detected in writing? It's a conversation that's been put together by Thad McIllroy, a member of our several of our committees, including the AI working group that I'll talk about in a moment. We anticipate doing a series of webinars on AI with Thad's leadership and direction. The first two have already been scheduled. This is the first, and next, toward the end of June, we'll be doing a follow-up that will cover a different topic also related to AI. And you're welcome to register for that if you find value in that going forward. Today's conversation is going to be kind of both structured and informal at the same time. A lot of interaction among the folks that Thad's put together to talk with you about what AI is capable of and what you can look for in terms of detecting AI in provided works. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We will have time at the end for questions, and we encourage you to put them in the Q&A box that's available in the navigation bar at the bottom of your screen. You can also use chat, but honestly, it's a lot easier for us to track questions and make sure they're in the queue if you put it in the Q&A box. And if you have anything any technical issues, do use the chat for that. That's a really helpful way. With that in mind, Thad, I think I'm going to turn things over to you and have you kick us off and figure out what AI can help us do when it comes to detecting its use in writing.
Great, thanks very much, Brian. And thank you, Brooke, who works with Brian and was a big supporter in putting this together. The two of them made it all possible today, and I very much appreciate that. I've been part of the book industry study group committee, workflow committee, and as a subgroup within that is an AI committee. I always get the working group versus committee thing switch, but you get the idea. So the AI group within the workflow group is the first that I know of in any of the international publishing industries that are focused, cross-organizationally to try and understand better what's going on with AI, what the opportunities are, what the concerns can be, should be. And it's out of that thinking that we've all been doing there that I proposed to Brian and Brooke that we begin a series of conversations around topics that are important, that are interesting, that are pertain to publishing, the intersection of publishing, authoring, and AI. That's the idea here. And as I thought it through, I thought we don't need a bunch of presentations. What we need is conversations. We need conversations within the industry, bringing in outside experts, and then conversations amongst ourselves within the industry. So we hope for lots of Q&A. We've allotted enough time for that today. And as Brian mentioned, there'll be another, the second event, which will be June 25th, is going to look for the first time at the impact of AI on book translation, which is going to be a huge factor in the years ahead. In the similar way that AI has impacted audiobook creation, I think it's going to have a very big impact on translation. The program today, we've got three very good speakers. One, to start us off, Jose will be looking at kind of the broad issues and trying to ground us in some of the concerns around the detection of AI in text. Then we go to Greg, an editorial perspective from a long-time publisher who's been looking at this closely and considering what publishers, what editors need to be doing around AI detection. And then Max Spero is our developer who's going to tell us how it all works and drill down on the specifics and the challenge of improving the accuracy of these engines, which, as you'll be hearing, is a big issue that we're all dealing with. Why don't I go from there right over to you, Jose? And could you introduce yourself and talk about your background, and then get us to the point where you intersect with AI and concerns around AI detection?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Jose Bowen. I've spent most of my career as an academic, 20 years as a professor, 20 years as an administrator. And my latest book is called Teaching with AI. And so it's about all of how these issues are interacting in the classroom. So detection is a big one, right? Higher ed is clearly very, very worried about what we call the homework apocalypse, that most of the assignments we've been giving can now be done by AI. And so how can you detect them, or do you have to do other assignments? So the short answer about AI detection is that detectors vary a lot. The bad ones are disastrous and really can't help you at all. The good ones are pretty good, and they're significantly better than humans. So when you compare, can humans identify AI, or at least faculty? They're at 54%, and Turnitin is at 95% accuracy. So for higher ed, the problem is that 1 out of 20 false positives. What do you do with that? And so a lot of faculty think this is like plagiarism, and it's like, aha, I caught you. But it's not like catching plagiarism, right? With plagiarism, I've got a source. Here's the source. Here's your work. They're identical. I have a kind of proof. With AI detection, right, we're looking at probability scores. So there's a 80% probability that 30% of this is done with AI. And so for faculty, well, what do you do with that? And so you have to think more carefully about, well, what does that mean, right? If I catch a student who's plagiarized a whole essay, it's easy. So Max is going to tell us about the very latest and his software that works better than Turnitin. But in general, the very best detectors do work, but they don't work 100% of the time. They work better on longer samples, so like a whole book, but they work less well under a couple of circumstances. So the easiest one is if you just pay for a humanizer, right? So there's now a whole other class of products that will take your AI generated text and humanize them. There are, by the way, also a whole set of essay writers who do this, humans who do this for a price. Who will, as a human, take the writing and make it more human. So that obviously makes it harder to detect the original AI. But the kind of prompt, right? We're getting better at prompting. So if I ask you to write me a 500-word essay on X, it's generic, and so the AI produces generic text. But if I say, produce me a 500-word op-ed in the style of Frank Bruni that has a really interesting hook. And before you start, ask me if you need anything else, and slow down and think more. Right, the better, the longer, the more specific the audience, the prompt is. The better the output is, and so in some ways it's harder to detect, but also maybe you don't care as much.
Jose, when I was reading your book, I was moved, I guess that would be the right word, by the implications and potential implications for students being falsely accused one way or another of using AI in their work, and the really severe impact that can have on their success as students. And I thought there's a real overlap there between the kind of risk that authors are running in this same kind of paradigm. Can you talk about that for a bit?
Well, the problem is that, it's hard to prove your innocence, right? With plagiarism, again, there's a standard, but if you get accused, and there's a story in the book about a student who gets accused of using AI, and so he cleverly goes and submits his professor's work to the same AI detector, and it comes back 100% AI, even though the professor wrote it before, in AI. So the professor then gets confused and says, oh, well, it was in the database. And it's like, no, that would be plagiarism, right? So the student thinks, aha, I've got this. And the professor just ignores this. So the problem, how do I defend myself? And so what we advise for professors, and I would advise editors, is to have a conversation, right? What does this mean? But I think the real issue is to recognize that already all of our writing is hybrid, right? That we already use things like dictionaries and a thesaurus or spell checker. Those are somebody else's intellectual work, right? Somebody else created the thesaurus. And none of us would say, oh, well, you have to disclose the use of the thesaurus, or maybe a spell checker. Grammarly right, people think is okay, but Grammarly has got AI now built into it. It'll rewrite as in front of your very eyes. And so we're going to have to reconsider that. Music, by the way, went through this, right? Music is now mostly hybrid. When samples first started, there were some lawsuits and people said, oh, you can't use this. And now audiences are perfectly fine to have music that includes samples from other work. There is a structure now to acknowledge that. But so what we consider to be original and creative is probably going to undergo some stress with this time.
Another writer who writes very clearly on AI and education, Ethan Mollick, who many people will have heard of, whose new book is out, he takes the stand that students must use AI. He's not concerned about its use, he's concerned about the lack of use. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I like to say that, what faculty and teachers call cheating, business calls progress, right? that if you say, oh, you can't use this tool like a spell checker or a calculator, and then you graduate and your colleague who's going for the job says, well, I can do the same work, but I can add those numbers faster because I use a calculator, that person gets hired. So I do think, look, students need to learn how to write, and writing is about process. But we also have to teach them how to use AI. There's my colleague, my co-author, Eddie Watson, met a student who was working full-time and going part-time in the evening to take a course on business writing. And in the course on business writing, right, AI use is forbidden. And then at work, her boss says, you're slower than everybody else. I need you to use AI to increase the speed at which you produce these press releases or marketing copy or whatever it is. And so she's confused, right? So yeah. We're seeing this already in the workplace, and we're seeing it in places where we think it's okay and in places where it's not okay. AI reviews, for example, we don't want those. So we are going to have to figure out where it's acceptable, but for email or for adjusting your email to make it shorter and easier to read, right? I think I'm all in favor of the automatic AI that makes everybody's email half as long and easier to read, right? And in fact, there's an AI tool called AI for Busy Writers or Busy Readers that does just that, right? You plug in your text and then it outputs a text that's half as long with bullet points. That's what you really meant to say. That's probably fine.
Talk about the ways that you used AI in writing your book, Teaching with AI.
So the irony is one of the biggest problems, and Ethan Mollick says the same thing, that one of the biggest problems for AI use is that we forget to do it, right? We forget, which is why Microsoft has built it in Copilot, so it shows up all the time and it keeps prompting you to do stuff, because otherwise you just start typing and then you realize, oh, I could have had AI write this letter of recommendation. So AI is a good mimic. So I can use it, for example, to write feedback to students in my voice. Here are 1,000 essays I've graded. Here's the feedback. Write in my style. It's a more consistent writer and grader than I am. But when I'm, working on a book, one of the things I can do is I use it as a first reader. Right. So what are the things that my editor, he's a real crotch about this. I want that to, how do I find all those things? Or the other one is, here is the book. And, Claude now takes 2 million words. So that's more than most of you want to publish. So here are my 2 million words. Did I repeat myself in chapter 16? Are there places where there's overlap? Could I streamline this? Another tool that I use is I say, give me an outline of the book. So I've already written the book, but give me the 2-sentence or the 1-sentence outline for each chapter, because I want to know. And again, I've been doing this for decades. That editors, a smart editor said you should do the 1-sentence outline, and so now I want to know, does it match the one I intended? Right? Does the book actually read as a whole in the way that I intended? I can also so now read the book again. This time from the point of view of the curmudgeon. Right, the faculty member who never wants to change anything, or the audience member who's politically different, right? It's a great way to get a sampling of what someone else in the audience could do. It's also for fact checking, right? Are there links? I did ask AI to read the book and to check the bibliography and put it into APA formatting, which I thought I had done, and it found a couple of mistakes. But here's the crazy bit. So it added a reference. It found a mistake in one of the chapters. You didn't reference this in chapter 4. Here is the citation you meant to add. And it was right. I had left out one side, which I'm actually pretty proud about after 500 or whatever, right? There was one thing that just didn't get cited. And I thought, well, maybe I cited the secondary source and I hadn't cited it at all. And it found it. So as a fact checker, are all the citations where they need to be, right? The president of Harvard would have been very grateful to have this tool. Right there.
Talking about those things, Jose, I'm thinking no AI detector in the world can find that usage.
I don't think.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry if I can jump in for a minute.
Sure.
Yeah, I think like really this sort of usage of like brainstorming or editing is like not really the use case where you want to be using AI detectors. I think where you want to be using AI detectors is like the low effort version of like, hey, write this whole chapter for me, or like, just write a blog post or an essay. And that's the sort of like low quality content that we want to be filtering out. I'll talk more about this later.
Yeah, no, Max is right.
Why I think of that one, Max, is that if the issue is the kind of ethical issue of the use of AI, then does that ethical consideration differentiate between text generation, text editing, ideation, feedback?
So one of the things we do when we talk to students, which I think applies here as well, is we define the various stages of the project, right? Writing is not just writing. Writing is brainstorming. It's the thesis. It's the outline. It's the drafting. It's the editing. It's thinking about audience. It's all of it's checking references. It's all of those things. And so AI is going to be very appropriate for lots of those pieces. And in fact, it should make writing and editing better across the board. But as Max points out, there's also a lot of people who are going to take, write me 5,000 reviews or write, here's an interesting case. In science journals, right? We've noticed that the reviews of articles submitted to science journals have gotten substantially better in the last year because they're using adjectives like meticulously, right? And it's like, so because these are scientists, right? So these are scientists whose forte is not writing generally. And so their reviews of, right? So and because at first people said, oh, they're not reading the submissions. They're just using AI to read and write. I don't think that's the case. I think what's happened is they're reading the submissions, they're writing their pidgin English, and then saying, oh, make this sound a little nicer. And that's probably not a bad thing right? We know that, for example, summaries of scientific articles, people prefer to read the ones generated by AI than the ones written by scientists.
Yeah.
So you could detect those, but why bother? They're better.
Thinking about AI detectors as tools, you've made the point earlier that there's a difference between AI detection and plagiarism detection, because one is provable, the other not so. But I'm looking at it from a publishing perspective, and I want to lead into Greg with this, but starting with you, Jose. When I see it as a publisher, and I think that one of the big problems that publishers face is detecting if there is plagiarism in submitted work, then the fact checking of the work that's been submitted. If an AI a tool approach could help in those areas, that would be a plus.
Yeah, and I think AI can, do things like, what are the sources for this? Is this the right source for this? That's a great tool. Check all of the citations in this book and tell me if, in fact, these citations exist, if they are the correct citations. Is there information that should have been cited that wasn't cited? Are there authors in this field who should have been mentioned? That's what I actually tell faculty, right? I'm submitting to this journal. Are there people who might be asked to review this article that I should be sure to cite? Right. And so for those sorts of things, AI could work pretty well.
Greg, let's go over to you. You're working every day in the editorial trenches. Let's talk about the use and misuse of the tools. tell us to start just your job and how AI filtered into your life.
Sure, Thad. Thanks very much. My name is Greg Britton. I'm the editorial director at the Johns Hopkins University Press. I manage a team of editors who acquire serious nonfiction in the sciences, social sciences, and humanities. We also have a substantial trade line, as do many university presses. Because we're meeting with a group of publishers, I would be remiss in not trying to hand sell you Jose's book, which I worked on with him. So there you go. There's your commercial in the middle of the webinar. This is so interesting because I think it's important to differentiate between the two general categories of uses of AI. And one is in content creation, which we have concerns about. And the other is sort of the content management, the editorial tools, which we actually encourage. I mean, I think it would be foolish for an author to submit a manuscript without running spell check on it before they turn it in. We expect students to do this. Why not save your copy editor the trouble of finding those things? And the same with grammar check and other softwares like that. That seems perfectly appropriate. We do have concerns, though, that if an author is using AI to generate content, to write paragraphs, to rewrite sections, that might be concerning. We're really hesitant to use AI detection because, like plagiarism, it can be devastating information for an author, and it can be a sort of career-altering event. Everything we publish is peer-reviewed, which means a human being, an expert in a field, or two or three of them, are reading through a manuscript and assessing its value, its publishability, its importance, its excellence. Could that be done by AI? Some of that could be, but I think a substantial. I wouldn't want to replace the human element in those assessments. And the
Staying on the
thing,
topic for a second of plagiarism and fact checking, which is a real problem in publishing today, that, in the same way that students can be heavily penalized for the use of AI that's undisclosed, authors are in big trouble if they plagiarized or not done their fact checking. And taking that over to the AI sphere for a moment, where the problem occurs is when the public finds out about this, when a book gets published and it has been proven to be plagiarized and or poorly fact checked. Now we're going to run the risk that a public would detect in a book extensive use of AI if they use the tool and you have not used the tool. Are you running risks in that area?
There's certainly a reputational risk. And when you think of the high-profile cases of people being found out as for plagiarism, it doesn't come from the publisher. It's someone else who's gunning for them, which means a sometimes minor mistake early in someone's career can haunt them the rest of their lives, and that's really problematic.
And so, is AI undetected AI use really problematic?
Again, it depends what it is. If it's content creation, I'd love to know, we have a policy that asks authors to disclose, to be transparent about their use of AI, and holds them accountable for the quality of that work. They are legally responsible for their writing,
And that's an important point. I say to students, I say the most important part of your policy is the last line, which has to say, ultimately, you're responsible for the quality of the work. Right. So however AI helped you, right? I mean, the problem with that lawyer who got caught was that he didn't check the work, right? He said, oh, well, the AI did it. It's like, no, it's still your work, in the same way that we don't say, well, the spell checker made a mistake. I mean, you produce the work, you're responsible for it. And so I think that is going to matter.
Yeah.
Greg, are you putting that into your contracts, or is that a sort of a memorandum to the author?
We have a general guideline on our website, and we're working on language to include that in the contract. We're also asking when I commission a peer review, I'm asking the peer reviewer, do your own work. We'd like you not to upload this unpublished manuscript to an AI and come back with a report. That's, we can do that ourselves.
Yeah.
The other point I want to make is that scholarship, the nature of scholarship is that it's always been collaborative. It's always been hybrid. Books are in conversation with other scholars. They're in conversation with other books. They're in journal articles. That whole knowledge creation happens in this sort of iterative way. And so the lines between what is my work and what is my interpretation of someone else's work get blurred all the time. And I think I would be nervous about AI identifying that as somehow plagiaristic.
Should authors be using these tools as a kind of safeguard against being falsely accused?
I love Jose's example of using AI to find all the places that he may have been repetitive. That's a brilliant use of AI. And he disclosed that he had used this. And I thought these are terrific tools. I would love to find a workable AI that created book indexes. That were accurate and we could use them. That would save authors hundreds of hours. It would save tens of thousands of dollars every year in fees for those tasks that could be mechanized.
We're heading
It's
in
coming.
that direction.
Yeah.
Now let's go over to Max, and now we want to go under the hood and talk about Max. Two things. One thing that by not having done a demo, people haven't seen the software in action. Maybe you could briefly describe how the software works, how people encounter it, and then go down deeper into how your company is working to create better detection tools.
Yeah. Okay. I'll introduce myself first. Hi, everyone. I'm Max. I have a pretty deep background in AI and machine learning. I did AI research at Stanford. I trained large machine learning models at Google, and recently have started Pangram Labs, and we're doing AI generated content detection, especially for like spam and fraud. So our tool, kind of how it works, we have a dashboard that you can log into. You can either drag a file or copy paste some text in, and then we'll give you a score on like what our model thinks about this text. Like, is it AI written or is it human written? And which specific parts of the text tipped off the model.
Does
And
it
then
talk
we
about
also have
overall? Will it say 80% of this was generated, or will it be 80% certainty that AI was used in the creation of the text?
yeah, so it would be more like 80% certainty that AI was used for some or most of the text. So we can't say like, oh, some small fraction of it is. But I think this is at least for smaller documents. When we're talking like most of our evals are on blog posts, emails, essays, like this sort of length. So if we're talking like a book length, then we'd probably run this 300 times, like once for every 500 words or so. So then in some sense, we can actually get a sense of what percentage of the document was written by AI if we're looking at a whole book length.
When we were talking before, you said that your initial where you're getting most interest right now in the use of your tools is from trying to prevent fraudulent reviews.
Absolutely. Yeah, review platforms actually have a huge problem right now because previously they were using these like contextual signals to figure out what content is spammy. For example, like people writing really say I'm a restaurant or I'm a moving company. I do a horrible job moving people's stuff, and I have like 1.5 stars on Yelp. Well, I can actually pay a business $5,000, and they're gonna go flood my Yelp page with positive reviews. And previously they do that by like paying people in the Philippines to write reviews, and now they do it by using AI and can actually get around a lot of the previous filters. So we've been helping review platforms deal with this kind of deluge of AI generated reviews. We've also been helping some social media sites. I think Quora is the biggest one. So they have a big issue with people wanting to be experts even when they're not. So someone asks a question, they answer it by asking ChatGPT and then pasting in that, which is crazy. And I think I think like we're doing our best to keep the internet usable and free and open.
So Max, the people who were writing the spammy reviews,
Yes.
right, the AI reviews, right, they're going to see your detector and they're going to try to find what. So what is? Tell me what you think is the future, right? Because this has always been the way with pirates versus the Navy, right? So ultimately, are you going to be able to stay ahead of them, or will they come back with some way to get around your detector?
Yeah, so it's absolutely a cat and mouse game, the same way email spam has been cat and mouse for 2+ decades. But I think that's the benefit of us kind of being centralized and powering multiple different like spam detection platforms, is that we can be here in the background, be completely on top of all the latest model or all the latest developments like new models, humanizers, and we can kind of fix this once and then solve it for everybody. So like just recently, we retrained our model on GPT-4o, Claude 3, Llama 3, and are able to like, we raised our accuracy rates to 99.84% on our personal benchmark, which we're pretty proud of. But obviously there's still like work to be done to get those last couple nines of accuracy.
Can you get the last 0.6%?
I think so. I think it's not easy, and I think but I think part of this is just like training larger models, acquiring more data, and trying to do this in an ethical way.
But you think
You had said
eventually
that
you're
it's
going to
very
win, though.
different to. Oh, sorry, Jose.
So, Meg, but you eventually think that you will be able to defeat the pirates.
So I think currently we are in a winning position, but the way it's going to work is we're in a winning position. The fraudsters are able to develop a way to bypass it, and then we need to develop a new way to beat them again. And so it's going to be a back and forth. And our job is really just minimizing the amount of time that the fraudster's new method works.
If I'm thinking of book publishings are going from the smaller chunks of text to much larger, and I'm a book publisher. I've come to you, Max, and described this problem where I feel that authors are submitting manuscripts to my publishing company, not disclosing the use of AI, and I don't know what I should be doing about that. What's your advice from the context of the tools that you can offer?
Yeah, I mean, we can absolutely help with that. I think just like there's a couple ways to do it. Either like you could just upload the book in whatever file format, or like we can do some more serious integration that's more automatic. But I think, yeah, beyond that, there's kind of like a trust issue you need to that I'm not sure how you deal with.
You had said to me when we were talking initially that of not using this tools in a punitive mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like difficult to say like if somebody submits you a manuscript and it's we say it's AI written, like do you want to ban them for life, or just like kind of ignore this one submission and like pretend it didn't happen? And I think maybe um probably the latter, at least for the first time. And then if they come back and do it again, then you have a more serious problem.
What do you think about that, Greg?
You know, I was thinking that on Friday I received a book proposal that was clearly written by AI. It had all the hallmarks in the language, and it was a proposal that began. The Johns Hopkins University Press publishes books on X, and this is a book on X, which you will like, and your mission says, and it was completely copied from our website about what we wanted and how this book fit that. And it was so poorly done that it was an easy reject. So if I know somebody, I mean, this is clearly not an author that I wanted to work with. They were in fact wrong about what we were interested in, but it was drawn completely from our own website. So
when you think about something like that, how clumsy that one is, but for a lot of other authors, it's going to be quite a bit more sophisticated.
right. And it may be a matter of time before they get very good at what they do.
Yeah, well, most of that's just a matter of better prompting. I mean, that's
Yeah.
actually the skill that we're teaching college students to do, right? It's so
Yeah.
you have an interview for a job at Microsoft next Wednesday, right? Here's my cover letter. Here's the person I'm interviewing. Let me have a mock interview. What else, right? That skill of how to personalize content, or I submitted this project to the Lumina Foundation. I need to rewrite it for the Wallace Foundation. Use the goals, right? Rewrite it so I emphasize, right? That's actually a good use of AI, at least from the right. That's going to save me time and make something better and more personalized. It's of course also exactly the same strategy that people are going to use to target your phishing and your spam in your email. Is right that in the past marketing was generic, and now it's all going to be specific to you, individualized. So
while I agree with that in theory, I do also feel like AI writing is so clumsy and awkward and just like doesn't sound great. And on top of that, the fact that like everybody has access to like basically everybody having access to AI kind of like raises the baseline for what is like a below average email or submission. So I feel like it's no matter what you do in terms of prompting, it's never really enough to just like take the output of ChatGPT and just submit it. You always have to be like,
yeah, so I
using that and
disagree.
incorporating
I
that.
disagree with that. So I on the one hand, I disagree with the half part. I absolutely think AI is raising average, right? There's no question that even if AI does lousy work, it's a C, right? One of my advisors is, we should no longer graduate students who do C work because nobody's going to hire them if AI can do that. But right, there's really interesting, if you use AI well, you know how to prompt well. There's a couple of great studies this last month that AI is more persuasive than humans, and AI writing is more persuasive than human writing, significantly so. Persuading people to not have conspiracy beliefs was one that came out a few weeks ago. And right, the reason is because AI is a better listener than humans, because AI actually listens to you and doesn't get emotionally involved or upset, right? Doesn't try to convince you with facts. So right, AI, right? I mean, it was like 85% more persuasive than humans in this study that happened just a few weeks ago. And so I think there are lots of cases. There's dozens of these. If the vet calls me to tell me my pet has died, right, and the AI assists, I'm happier with the call. And right, so there's in lots of different contexts, we see that AI can actually improve communication because it's a better, more sensitive listener. One the Stanford author says it's like Grammarly for empathy.
Yeah, I do wonder about if AI is 85% more persuasive than like the average human, but like, what about if you're talking about like the real baseline is not actually the average human. The real baseline is like competition of like who top writers, like who do people want to read?
No, and you're exactly right that in fact the AI is better, and that's in fact a pretty generalizable result, that AI is better than 80% of humans at a lot of things, but it's not better than the experts, which of course for educators is a gigantic problem, because how do we graduate only A students? I mean, really A students, not just give them an A, but how do we actually raise standards so that everybody graduates as an expert? In other words, how do you become a senior lawyer, who is still better than AI, by the way, if you can't be an intern, because the AI is better than the intern at doing the find all the contracts that have negotiable terms. Yeah. So that's an educational or training paradox that we're going to have. But yes, the best writers, the best experts are better than AI. But from things like radiology to financial analysis, right, AI is now better than 80% of humans. And I think
Let's
that's
talk
true
about
of writing.
you raised the point about the interns, and that one is very particular to the publishing industry because there's a lot of concern of AI. If it can replace the interns, where do we get the next generation of publishers?
Actually, in our office, it's the interns who are coming in with an expertise in AI, and they're teaching the rest of us. So they are mentoring up.
That's great. Brian, should we go over to some questions from the audience?
We do have several questions, and we can start on those. And if you want to bring them back to the conversation, we can do that as well. So starting with Bill, early in the conversation was asking, what should publishers do to make sure their authors are using AI in a legal and ethical manner? And I think folks I heard are kind of divided on that.
Oh, you know what? My advice is figure it out yourself, what the lines are, have a written set of guidelines, and then have those conversations. I think there's no harm in beginning that conversation as early as possible. So
you said, Greg, that you've got sort of a policy statement that you're looking to make contractual, but that's sort of the negative side of it. Is there sort of a helpful sheet on you could do this, you could try that? These are acceptable uses.
yeah, we don't have that, but you're making me think we should. That's and when I read your blog post about this session, you had this great outline of what the tools are. So thank you
What
for
the
that.
uses are.
That's going to be the beginning of my list of things that are acceptable. So
Good. I wanted to post a link to that, but I'm having a hard time getting my chat to chat.
I can do it for you.
Okay, great.
So I think one thing, right, the law is going to change on this, right? The law always hangs behind, especially on copyright. Music is a great example, that the person who creates the work owns all of the variations, et cetera, forever. The performers don't get anything. I'm a jazz musician, so I'm particularly sensitive to this, right? Nobody cares how Stan Getz played it. All of the copyright goes to the person who wrote Autumn Leaves, even though we don't care, right? So, we're still behind on so many things. And so I do think, right, Google says that you own whatever you produce with their AI. They can say that, but if the Copyright Office doesn't accept it, then right. So I think it's going to change quickly. I also think what's ethical and what we think, that's going to change too, right? At the moment, I think most of us would be okay with Grammarly or spell checkers. And probably with suggestions for outlines, et cetera, but not whole paragraphs. Although Ethan Mollick loves to put in his book on co-intelligence, that last 3 paragraphs were written by AI, and he's right. You get unstuck. It's a great way. Give me 3 ways to finish this paragraph. So I think there are lots of opportunities to have discussions about what's acceptable, but it's clearly going to change in the same way that it has in music, that people are much more willing to accept a more hybrid product.
Yeah. Right.
Paul is asking, this is specifically directed at Greg. You're feeling, will the open access movement create an incentive for the use of AI in peer review?
That's
Can
it.
Greg just give people the background on the open access movement? Just give for those who aren't familiar with it.
Oh, it's the move to make content freely available instead of a for sale model. It's either funded in the beginning, and so it's books and journal articles are posted free for worldwide use. That's a good question, and I don't know if how I feel about it. I'm not sure it would supplant a human peer review. It may augment a human peer review. I don't know. It's a terrific question to think about.
If I can jump in, there's a couple studies that GPT-4 prefers its own writing over like other people, which probably makes sense. It thinks its own writing is fairly optimal. So I think it's a little bit dangerous to
Don't we all, Max?
exactly. We all do, but like it's a little dangerous to use AI for this, I think, because then you might actually incentivize kind of like all sorts of like everything to sound the same.
And I thank you. I love that. I will say though that so AI has a bias, right? It accelerates the human bias of the training data, but humans, it's hard to change your own bias, right? If you're an editor, say, right, you like certain things, you don't like other things, and so for like, again, the example I use is for grading papers, right? Faculty like papers that agree with them. But an AI, if I train an AI, if I say, here are all of my feedback on the papers, it then grades like I do. It has the same bias, in fact, amplifies that bias. However, it's a lot easier to change the bias of an AI than it is a human. I can just tell the AI, so I'd like you to prioritize work that disagrees with everything I've ever said, right? And it's done. I mean, it's not a perfect solution, but it's done. And for a human to say, I'd like you to select books to publish that make my life's work meaningless, right? That's a really hard thing for a human to do, but it's easy for an AI to do with the right instructions.
Great point.
Lynn Marie is asking, she wanted to know about AI detection for entries submitted for awards. So this is a use case for Max. She adds that the policies of the organization that she works with state that AI generated work is not eligible, but how do they know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way to know is, I guess there's a couple things. One is to just study up. This is sort of what we did before I started this company, is like did a lot of work just trying to like train my own human AI detector in my brain to like figure out, like, to be able to read something and know for a fact by myself, like, is this AI written or not? And then the other thing you could do is obviously use our tool, submit to the dashboard, and send me an email if you're interested. I'm happy to get you set up.
Yeah,
Go ahead, I would say.
Well, I just think that, right, if it's up for an award, right, as Max has said, right, most of the AI writing is pretty average or pretty mediocre, right? So, the problem that we have is the flood of bad travel books. The Mike Steves from Edmonds, Washington, who's not Rick Steves, and so Amazon's solution was, right, you can only submit 3 books a day if you're an author, right? It's idiotic. So that problem is going to be easy because those books will be relatively easy to detect. But if something is award-winning, if something is really, really good, then I think it's unlikely to have been just, write this essay, write this book for me. But the issue for me is that, right, there could be lots of ways that AI has contributed to that book, written sentences, right, offered alternatives for paragraphs or voice, that might be detectable, but might also be ethical. And so, I think there's 2 prongs of that. If you say you can't have any AI writing in an award-winning book, what does that mean? Does that mean no sentences, no word suggestions? Because again, Grammarly will say, here are 3 other words, right? It does the thesaurus, it's built in, right? Here are 3 other words you might consider. That's going to be hard to detect. But it's also, is that wrong? It's just automating the thesaurus function.
You're touching on an issue that we haven't raised that's worth bringing into the conversation, which is copyrightability of AI text. And there's something, everyone in the audience should be aware that, there are very large issues that are being sorted out within the copyright community. The basic guidance from the Copyright Office is that which is generated by AI is not copyrightable, but they immediately fall into the rabbit hole of things we're talking about. How much of it is detectable? So what, this one paragraph in a 300-page book cannot be copyrighted, or this sentence, that sentence. Quickly they lose their bearings on that topic.
And if again, we don't have Max's product on public use yet. But at the moment we don't have a detector that's good enough to always write. And so how would you be able to prove? And then again, if Turnitin does make mistakes, And even right, Max has this tiny one. So if I
Yeah,
say
we still
no,
make mistakes.
I made, I say he's wrong. How do we adjudicate the fact that I say I didn't use AI and the software says I did?
Right.
Yeah.
It's that
Just
question.
before,
So if we know, what do we do? What do we do
Yeah.
with this information?
But how will the Copyright Office, right? They can say they're not going to. I mean, what are they actually going to do? Are they going to check for AI and using what tool and to what standard?
yeah,
Yeah, you could end up getting
it's
into like a big
unclear.
legal dispute where they want like actual evidence that you wrote this yourself and not that it came out of an
Yeah, and
LLM.
if you want evidence for how legally convoluted that can be, right? Go back and look at all the legal cases of no, you stole my song. Look at this. Here's the right feelings. Here's the chord. Right. I mean, all of that. I mean, musicologists testify. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Jose, you've mentioned a tool called Turnitin a couple of times, and people in this audience won't be as familiar with Turnitin, which is very widely used in academia, but isn't necessarily very familiar to people in the publishing community. In the blog post that I wrote over the weekend as a preparation for this session, I put right at the end of the post 3 or 4 tools that are often referenced, as well as Max's Pangram tools. So you have some that you can play with and see the results. Just this morning, I getting ready to start this, I threw an article from the Guardian newspaper into 2 of the tools, and one immediately said 100% human. The next one said 80% AI. It happens all the time.
It is, and the studies that use them, again, Max correctly identified, right? The issue is that every couple of weeks, somebody invents a new humanizer, or Claude comes up with a new version, right? And so once that happens, right, it takes a long time for a study that's, I tested 15 detectors and here's my results. And by the 6 months later that it comes out, all of those detectors are now out of date because the models they used. And so it's hard to keep up with this, certainly from an academic research standpoint. And so I don't think we're going to have clear standards very quickly where you can be assured. And again, even if you think you've detected it, to what level and what does a person who's been accused do? But again, at the low level, I think it's going to be easier.
Yeah, I think there's something else to be said for like there's been a lot of tech companies that are kind of like pushing out products that are like not fully ready yet. So like ChatGPT becomes popular and then all of a sudden like GPT-0 skyrockets to like the top of Google search rankings because it's the only thing available. It's not good, but like they were first to market, and that's sort of like all it really takes when there's such a large need, especially in education. So people will use something. And then so I think part of this problem has been like figuring out when to deploy responsibly versus not. Like we've worked very hard to make sure our false positive rate is very low, but in this time, we've lost market share to say like to GPT-0 and also just like Turnitin that's released their 95% accurate model, which is like maybe good enough, but also has falsely accused some students. And so we're still grappling with that and trying to make sure the uses that we're deploying in are ethical and they're going to be a net positive for the world.
Let's go to another question, Brian.
So I just wanted to follow up with an aspect of what you were talking about with respect to copyright. Anonymous attendee asked, should publishers be asking and keeping a list of what parts of a book may be AI generated? Do we need to be that granular? And I think, Greg, you started to give an answer by saying develop your policies now and then adapt them as you need to.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. It's frightening if I think too hard about that one.
I think best practice is going to be that you should disclose as much as you can. I mean, yeah. I tell students and I tell authors, I say both things are true. One, you are responsible ultimately for the work, but you should disclose the use of AI. In fact, I ask for the prompts, and I want not only APA says you only have to give, the date. I want the version. I want to know which version of AI that you asked. Is it a paid version? Is it a free version, et cetera? And what the prompt was. So I think, even that may not be in the book itself, because that's going to be page, right? Good prompts are long. But I think that disclosure of what AI might be something that you put in the supplemental materials. But that to me seems like good ethical practice. And that's what we did.
Yeah, Jose, that reminds me, it is essentially a footnote, and you can borrow someone else's work in your own, and the protocol is you note it. So
yeah,
put in the blog post, Jose, your guidance to students. And that was really interesting, because you're asking them not just about AI, but who helped you with this? Parent, a friend? What references were you? I think that broader question is actually a really good question for authors. Who helped you with this? I mean, it's not something that a publisher can require, but it's something that we all should be in conversation with authors about. What are all the tools that you use to make this fine work that you presented to us?
Well, and it gets at, for dealing with students, it gets to the integrity question, which is broader than academic integrity, which is that if your parents have PhDs and they helped you with your essay and I don't, that's not fair. Because I didn't have anybody I knew who I could go say, hey, will you read this? Will you read my history assignment? Right. And so, and students are sensitive to those sorts of things. And so when you start talking about all of the tools, right, did you do all of the work yourself? You quickly realize that no, nobody does. Right. We all use other people and tools to do these sorts of things. There's one thing. There's another question about the uploading in the various versions. So I just want to emphasize, if you've never used a paid AI, unless you've used the new 4.0 from ChatGPT last week, you're using a dial-up modem and trying to assume that you know something about the internet, right? The paid tools are substantially better. At the moment, the 4.0 from OpenAI is free. I don't think it will be for very long. But the other thing is that, right, I am not worried so much about uploading content because they don't want me pissing in the well. Right, I am not going to change the model because I upload it. Otherwise, people would be doing it all the time, right? I'd be saying, "Oh, Bob Smith wrote Hamlet, not William Shakespeare." I'd be uploading that 5 million times, trying to change the Google results, and that's not how AI works, right, Max?
No, I should jump in because I think most you got to read the privacy policy for most of these. I think like Anthropic and OpenAI, even if you get the paid version, they can still use your chats in their training data. So you need to be very careful that you're not like unintentionally giving them basically the license to train on someone's work that's not yours. And so I think, but there's ways to get around that. For example, like the ChatGPT Enterprise mode, which is a little bit more expensive. They won't train on your data. And similarly, I think there's other services that are like that as well.
Yeah, this is assuming we trust them, of course. But yeah, the pay,
Yes.
you can pay for more privacy in the world in a lot of ways, and Max is absolutely right there. And so yeah, you want to check that you're not. But again, there's a difference between you'll be used in the training data for the next set, and they're going to release your manuscript, right? So it gets amalgamated into this. We learn from it.
But not everybody is comfortable with having their stuff at the training set.
No, 100%, and I agree with that. But I also say, look, but if you really care about this, read the agreement when you bought a car, right? GM owns the conversations you're having in your car on your phone, right? So does Hyundai, Mitsubishi, right? That's why somebody is suing Cadillac, because it reported how often they break to their insurance company. So you've got other places where people are listening to your conversations, and your car is the chief culprit, your phone, right? Alexa, etc. So you've got, this is happening in lots of places in your life, and we should all be worried about this.
We're at the hour. I think we have to wrap it up here. I want to thank Jose Bowen, Greg Britton, Max Spero, for a wonderful conversation today. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on June 25th. And thank you, Brian, and thank you, Brooke.
A pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.